Denise, you have a writing lesson coming up. Can you tell me about your writing lesson?
Sure. So tomorrow we are going to continue with the writing process with narrative writing that I've been working on with Jonathan. We are going to kind of start to narrow down our ideas on what we can write about for a narrative. He prefers fiction, so I focused on that in terms of the writing process and the different elements we should focus on. So today and last Thursday, we started brainstorming big ideas. So we had a brain kind of map out where he drew out different ideas, and today we whittled it down a little bit more and we created a word web with one of those ideas.
Is that the word map you were referring to in your lesson?
Yes.
Or, okay.
Where he chose kind of a bigger concept from within his idea map that we did on Thursday, and then we started to branch off and talk about details. That was today.
Can you tell me like a little bit about what that looked like? So can you give me an example
of our word map from today?
Yeah.
So today we chose kind of a big example. So he talked about shopping as his big central idea, and then we branched off of that and we came up with different supporting details that have to kind of fall under that umbrella of shopping. And I used the 5 senses to get him to kind of think about super specific details about these ideas. So he wasn't just naming objects, for instance. When he talked about the food court, he literally just kept naming food. So we talked about the 5 senses and we talked about, well, what do you smell when you go in the food court? What do you see? To get him to kind of create a scene so that tomorrow when we begin our lesson, he starts to think of these ideas in terms of where they can fall within the plot or the elements of a story.
Okay. So you, in your lesson plan, you talked about a little bit, well, I think I got a little off topic when I was asking about reflecting on today. So reflecting on that map, how will that support him tomorrow?
So tomorrow we're going to have those supporting details on different sheets of paper, and he's going to allot each of those ideas under a specific column. So we're going to get a chart, and he's going to put those ideas underneath each column, either a setting or a character or a problem, and then he's going to put them underneath all of those and see where we can kind of mix and match, and see how we can add all of these details together to create one story about this big concept we talked about, which was shopping.
So it sounds like you have these columns ready so that he's able to, he already has the content from today,
Yes.
which is coming up in that brainstorming was today, and so then he'll then apply that and be able to take one, I'm assuming one in each column to kind of build the story, or will
Yes,
he?
so we'll take those ideas, which I'll have written out. Again, he came up with them, and I'm probably going to put them on little index cards, and then we'll decide which column does this item or this idea fall under. So for instance, if he talks about pretzels, we can put that under problem, because we can create a problem where a character really wants a pretzel but they can't find it, something like that. Setting, he talked a lot about places today, so we're going to talk a little bit more about setting tomorrow, and we'll line those up under the setting column, and it's going to kind of become like an equation where we add character
Okay.
plus setting plus problem equals a story.
Okay, and so then he'll be able to choose out from those like what his interest is in building that story.
What he wants his story to be about, yes. Mm-hmm.
Do you think that's important for Jonathan to be able to have that choice as he looks through the columns?
I'm a little resistant to it only because he gets very excited and it's difficult for him to focus. So by taking the ideas that he had today in his map, I'm going to pick specific words, and I'm actually going to make sure those are the ones that we're manipulating tomorrow so that he can kind of organize his thoughts. He doesn't mind when I tell him specific things to do, but I think it's important for him to learn to organize his own thoughts. So by giving him 3 or 4 options under each column, I think that's enough to have him create a story with those elements without him kind of going crazy.
Yeah, it seems like you're giving him the choice, but you're also limiting it. But it's still coming from his own ideas.
Yeah.
And then so after you talked a little bit about so after the column and building that and him making those choices, he's going to do a reading sentence?
Yes.
talk about that?
So we're going to kind of choose from those columns. We're going to make our equations, setting plus character plus problem equals story. And then we're going to kind of create a very general 1 to 2 sentence summary of what this potential story could be about, so that when we go to start kind of drafting it on Wednesday, he'll be prepared to already know what he's talking about, and we'll talk about how we can create a story just out of these couple of elements.
Okay, so it's almost like then you're creating this final organizer that's saying this is the idea that this is your, the map of like the story, your character's theme and setting, and then he's going to have that when he begins in the next part of the writing process. So is there anything that you'd like me to look for goals in this lesson?
I definitely want to ensure that I am allowing him time to think about what he says, giving him think time when it comes to creating his story. I already anticipate him being very excited and coming up with a whole bunch of ideas. So I have to work on kind of bringing him back focused into what the objective of the lesson is, which is to create a very clear story outline for the story that he's going to create. So making sure that he stays on task and ensuring that he's understanding what the objective is so that he stays on task.
Do you have any ideas for what you might do if he gets off task?
Well, one of the strategies that I've been using is I've been kind of asking him to reiterate to me the objective I just gave him, or the directive that I just gave him. So to ensure that he remembers what he's supposed to be doing, I'm going to ask him, well, what is our objective for this exact moment in this activity? And sometimes he does have trouble reiterating it to me, so I have to kind of repeat it to him, and then he repeats it back, and then we're pretty good for a little while after that.
Well, it seems like that sometimes helps him get back on task. Do you have any other ideas on what you could try?
I think also by giving him maybe an example of what the final product should look like. Today I used my example of summer for my word map, and that seemed to help him. So maybe coming up with some kind of an exemplar beforehand of what that column and what that storyline should look like, so that he can refer to it, so he can kind of rear himself in, and also help him visualize what the final product is supposed to be.
Okay, so it seems like you have this other idea to keep him on task by looking back at the model you create, and it sounds like it might be like similar to the story you created. It's your own story, not his, but be able to not just listen to stay on task, since that seems like it could be sometimes hard, but to actually be able to visualize, looking, depending on what kind of learner he is, that could benefit him to not just auditorily hear it, but also to visually see it as well. And so it sounds like I will be looking for the think time and bringing the focus back, and it seems like you have some really good strategies for keeping him on task. So it sounds like you have a good plan for your lesson.
Yes, I'm actually very excited because he did really well today.
Good.
All right, awesome.